Welcome to The Swing of Things, the US Rowing podcast produced in partnership with Row360 and sponsored by Prozac Partners, a leading integrated marketing and communications firm since 1990. I'm your host and CEO of US Rowing, Amanda Kraus. In this episode, we're going to take a look under the hood of US Rowing, specifically how we're adding value for our members. To help me do that, I'll be joined by US Rowing's Executive Director, Rich Cacioppo, and our favorite anthropologist, Chris Furlow, who is US Rowing's Director of Special Projects. And don't forget, we want to hear from you, our listeners. Email your thoughts, feedback, and any questions you might have to theswingoftthings@usrowing.org, and we'll try our best to answer as many as we can on the next show. But before hearing from Rich and Chris, let's get the latest international rowing news from our friends across the pond. Row360 editors Tom Ransley and Benedict Tuffnell, who have just gotten back from a very hot Bulgaria, where they have been at the Under-23 World Rowing Championships.
Thanks, Amanda. That's right. We're back from beautiful Bulgaria, where it was extremely hot. There's a bit of a heat wave going on in Europe at the moment. So some challenging racing conditions, but some good performances from the US team nonetheless.
That's right. 2 gold medals, a silver and 2 bronzes. Gold's coming in the US women's 8 and the lightweight men's pair, who did really well to get the win there.
There's a bit of bad luck as well. I think there could have possibly even been another medal for the US.
That's right. Their men's single sculler, Isaiah Harrison, really unlucky. I don't know if it was to do with the heat or not, but he missed by 1 place the AB semi-final because his blade, a screw came out of his blade, which basically meant he had some real steering issues down the whole track. And he said that he just didn't have that sprint, having kind of had to correct the line constantly, and I think it was a Japanese sculler that just got by.
Yeah, really unfortunate for him. He's an incredibly strong athlete. He's the one who famously posted some extraordinary erg times as a junior, and he won a medal at the under-19 level, and it was also in Plovdiv in 2021.
Yeah, impressive stuff. It'd be great to see him come back, and a talent for the future, I hope, for the seniors.
Yeah, certainly. Also, another interesting feature of the Under-23 Championships last week was the first time we saw the AIN athletes competing.
Yeah, that's right. So, since the war in Ukraine, World Rowing has banned Belarusian and Russian athletes from competing. So, in early June, following the IOC's lead, they have eased that ban, and they've allowed for the 4 championship events remaining in this year, Belarusian and Russian athletes to compete as independent neutral athletes, and they have to go through background checks as well, I understand. Is that right?
Yeah, so they've had to go through some very rigorous checks, looking at everything from things they've liked on social media posts to check basically...
not supporters.
Not supportive of the conflict in Ukraine.
And also enhanced anti-doping process as well.
Yeah, that's right. And so they were racing as under a completely neutral banner with black blades, black all-in-ones, and under the name AIN. What
I find interesting is that the 2023 World Rowing Championships is obviously the Olympic qualification. So let's say can 2 AIN boats be in the same boat class? Could they take a qualification slot, and how would you decide which country it went to going forward? Do you know what I mean? Yeah,
I think so. I think AIN is treated as if it was a single country, so there would only be 1 qualification spot for AIN athletes available.
So could you have a Russian and Belarusian in the same boat?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I'm not sure. We'd have to. That's one for the next episode. We'll do our homework. But another interesting. I was speaking to some of the World Rowing staff about this. So, if they were to win, I believe it's the World Rowing flag that would go up on the flagpole on the podium, and they would play. Apparently, there is a World Rowing anthem.
Is that the same anthem for the medal ceremony? Would you hear medal ceremony music and medal ceremony
Apparently
music?
It's different to the medal ceremony music.
Okay, very good.
So that's how they would handle it if they were to win.
Oh, very interesting.
So moving on, since the last episode, we were in Lucerne, Switzerland for the final World Cup Regatta World Cup 3. It was a very small US team racing out there. They just had 3 lightweight scullers, 2 women and a men's lightweight single scull. But we saw a gold medal nonetheless for the US team.
Yeah, Sophia Lewis going 1 better than she did when she raced in Varese, and actually took home the gold medal. Very impressive.
So up next for us, we're off to Paris next week for the Under-19 World Rowing Championships. The US will be there, and they're often very strong at this level, so I'm sure we'll see some gold medals for the US team there.
Yeah, and also a fantastic opportunity to see the Olympic venue in the flesh, so to speak. First time to see how that works, and they often do run a Junior Worlds the year before as a sort of a test event. So I'm sure you can scout out the best spots to shoot from.
Yeah, that's right. It'll be nice. It'll be our first glimpse or first taste of what some of the images will look like next year for the Olympics in Paris. I know there was a para regatta earlier this summer there, but it's never been used as a world rowing venue.
Yeah, really positive feedback from the para athletes. I understand. That's all we have time for from Ben and I. We're off to Paris. I'm sure we'll have plenty to talk about from there in the next episode. But for now, it's back to you, Amanda, and au revoir from us.
Goodbye.
Thanks, guys. That was Tom and Ben from Row 360. And now it is my pleasure to introduce our very own Executive Director, Rich Cacioppo, and US Rowing's Director of Special Projects, Chris Furlow. Hi, Rich. Hi, Chris. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, Amanda.
Thanks for having us.
You're here today to talk about the strategic plan that US Rowing has been working on. And the plan itself really focuses on these three pillars of experience, inclusion, and performance. And we're really going to home in on experience with the two of you today. And getting a little bit more granular, we talk about member value, rowing regions, and coaches. And prior to even sitting down with pencil in hand, there was a lot of work that went into hearing from our members. And I'd love to hear a little bit about what that process was like, and how did we come to learn what's important to US Rowing members?
Last year, we looked at a lot of the data from the annual member survey, and Rich and the membership team led some focus groups as well. And some of the major themes that came back from those was a desire to focus on basics and providing additional support for clubs, our organizational members, because they were struggling just doing the day-to-day activities in many cases. Then we did a formal survey of both organizational leaders and US Rowing staff to see what, at a more granular level, clubs were struggling with. And, there were definite patterns. There were about 14 specific areas that clubs were struggling with. So it's things like recruiting, fundraising, staff and volunteer management, how to hire a coach, find a coach, different things like that. And so we're really targeting those areas going forward.
And what stood out for you the most, Rich, from our members in terms of maybe top three areas of need?
One of the really consistent things that we saw from both rowing organizations and from US Rowing employees are things around staff management and fundraising. It's the day-to-day challenges of how do you have a highly functioning organization, especially in one where you have many volunteers and part-time staff. And the second is, how are you actually growing the pool of resources so that you can not just sustain your program, but grow your program? That said, there were also some areas where we saw some dissonance between what rowing clubs were saying were most important and what we as US Rowing see from the sort of 10,000 foot view as being critical. An example of that is safety. Safety was very high on our list. That didn't pop as high for a lot of clubs. And so as we shape our prioritized roadmap for content with this program on this platform, you'll see a mix of the things that are really, our member organizations are telling us are very critical, as well as the things that we as the governing body are seeing critical to the broader growth and sustainability of the sport.
Great. So standing out for you, things like fundraising, maybe not a stated need, but safety, program growth, scalability, and this learning experience platform you just mentioned a moment ago. What is that? When you talk about member value and this learning experience platform, can you describe what that is?
Sure. So the learning experience platform, or LXP, is basically a platform for allowing learning to take place, best practices to be exchanged in a scalable, efficient manner. We've looked at what other NGBs in rowing are doing around the world. We've also talked to NGBs of other sports, USA Swimming, as well as listening to our own members in great detail. I can speak from my personal experience with my kids rowing at Gainesville Area Rowing and serving on the board for 5 years. And so I came on and I was like, okay, do we have a development plan? Do we have a sponsorship deck? And they're like, no, whoever's in charge of whichever fundraising event it might be or a regatta, they take the lead. And so we found that we were actually approaching the same businesses 4 times a year, once for each event that we do by 4 different people. So one of the value adds that we're going to do with this learning experience platform, hopefully, and I'm working with the development team on this, is looking at providing a template for a sponsorship deck. So you don't have to reinvent a sponsorship deck every year, every time you get a new fundraiser or development director.
Do we get a lot of the same questions again and again from people? Is that one of the drivers behind, ask things that we need? Chris, you brought up sponsorship decks as a great example that, this is a template clubs need, organizations need. Are there other examples of, gosh, we wish we just had this to hand over to share?
Yeah, absolutely. From waivers to learn to row posters to recruiting materials. We're working on templates from start to finish, everything from eventually a club needs to start and form to templates for hiring coaches and what needs to be in those, interview questions that would be appropriate for interviewing potential coaches or staff. All these things end to end. I'm hoping that we'll have 100 templates or more by the end of the full build out for this project.
I think one of the important things to add here is we receive tons of questions, Amanda, and we do receive the same questions over and over again. So as we think about scaling this and bringing all of the knowledge that exists and making it more readily available, what we want to do is codify that information and make it more readily accessible for clubs so it doesn't necessarily require that phone call to an individual. We want that knowledge to be democratized and disseminated to our entire community. And I think an important point there is that this platform that we launch will be what's called multimodal. So Chris talked a lot about the templates that will be available. There will be formal coursework available. Some of that will be things that we build. Some of that will be things that we have third parties that ultimately integrate in to provide things like general management or finance and operations content as well. Another key part of this will be around mentorship and peer-to-peer elements of the platform. One of the things that we heard very strongly from our member feedback was about the desire to have mentoring amongst clubs. So to the extent our platform can facilitate that and help us scale this cross-learning, that's going to be another critical part of what we do. In no way are we trying to move to what I call a completely hands-off-the-wheel model, but we want to be able to focus that human element, those phone calls, to the things that are really critical for clubs growing that are more complex and can't be as readily put on a platform, and then scale as much as possible those things that we hear day in and day out. As Chris likes to say, don't reinvent the wheel for these clubs. Give them the information and what others have learned so they can do it themselves.
I'd love to shift us to talking about rowing regions, as I know that's a part of the plan as well. When we talk about that, what does that focus look like? What does that mean for our members?
One of the things that I think we've seen time and time again is the needs of regions can be very different for our sport. I think a great example of this is venue development. We've established a long-term plan for increasing the number of venues that we have available for both national and regional competition. How do we, for example, have a general manager for a region for USRowing who's partnering with local leaders and regional leaders who are part of our committees and councils and doing that hard but necessary work to help move venue development forward? I think that's a very tangible example where we have to recognize where our limitations are in our current structure and adapt in order to provide more value to our members.
The last piece of this pillar of experience I wanted to talk about is coaching. And, I think about coaches as the linchpin of our sport, right? Whether they're junior coaches or national team coaches, men, women, para, masters. They're the culture keepers of boathouses. They keep us safe on the water. They, technically make us good rowers. They inspire us. They have all of this. They have just such an important role. And I know that we hear very often from groups that are really desperate for coaches. They're looking for coaches part-time, full-time, all around the country. And so this is an area we want to invest in. And I'd love to hear more from you on that. What does that look like in the plan?
Sure. So I think there are a few components to how we think about this. And you're absolutely right about coaches being the linchpin for both the experience of our athletes today and the growth of our sport. I think there are a few categories here that kind of highlight the way that we're going to be approaching this. One of the things that we've had a lot of discussion about is how are we facilitating coaching opportunities? How are we making it easier and more transparent to see what coaching opportunities are out there, the requirements to be a coach, how to get started as a coach, and in turn use that to help build a pipeline of coaches. I think beyond that as well, it's what is that experience of coaches when they are in the thick of it? What is the peer support that we can provide? How do we empower clubs and how do we give them the skills that they need in order to be better support systems for the coaches at their programs themselves? I think the final piece of the puzzle here is how might we think about the way that grants and investments in coaching could be applied to help drive something like a coaching core, maybe something that looks somewhat akin to Teach for America. It's an ongoing support system where we create a matching network to have supply of coaches with demand from clubs, not just to be delivering an amazing experience for that club's athletes, but also to create an amazing experience for that coach. So, we're in the early stages of what that looks like and the shape of that and the funding model. But at its heart, it's really about providing an end-to-end experience for coaches in the clubs that they coach at.
Speaking of learning and development, Chris, I'll put this to you as the anthropologist. How will we know that this platform is working?
Sure. I'll give you an example from anthropology. When a professor of mine in graduate school gave a little talk, he was hired to plant trees in Haiti. And they said they wanted 1 million trees or something planted within 12 months. And he said, okay, we'll promise 10 million. And so he said that somebody came to him midway through the project and said, oh, it's terrible. People are stealing trees out of their neighbor's land and moving them to their land. And so, he said, perfect. We know this is working because they see value in the trees because they're stealing them. And so my hope is that once we get that peer-to-peer advocacy of, have you tried this platform? There's really useful stuff here. And there's enough of that going on that it actually gets back to USRowing staff and we start hearing about this peer-to-peer engagement. I think that will be the first sign that we're going down the right path and we're on the path towards success and that there will be lots of people involved.
Is there anything else you want to make sure our members hear about the plan, about the platform?
I just want them to know that particularly the mentorship program is something that we're going to be rolling out and to keep their eyes open for it. 85% of people who responded among the survey of organizational leaders said they were interested in participating. So just keep an eye open when some of these leaders that become part of our regional mentorship council are talking to you. Come aboard, get involved. The other thing I'd like to say is that we're actually curating a lot of the content from partner organizations. And so it's really, not just USRowing telling people what they should be doing. It's us looking to our members to see who does it really well.
I think the thing that I'd want to add is that This represents a significant investment for us, multi-year investment, starting with our rowing clubs, extending to our coaches, our referees, and ultimately all of our individual members as well. As we talk more about the strategic plan in other areas, you'll see how we're trying to create a model that is more sustainable and that we can better demonstrate to our members how we are reinvesting, their investment in us and member dues and other domestic revenue back into improving their experience.
I really appreciate both of you taking time with me this morning and with our members to talk about this plan and specifically this portion of it. I think it's really exciting. They're tangible. I think there'll be tangible results that our members will feel and be able to take advantage of. And I know you're leading on that, so really appreciate that and your time this morning.
Thanks, Amanda.
And now it is time for one of my favorite parts of the show, where I get to catch up with our very own Dutchman and US Rowing Chief High Performance Officer, Josie Verdonschot. Hi, Josie. It's good to see you. Where are you?
Well, actually, I'm where I should be. I'm at Mercer in the boathouse. This week, we are going to have the trials for the final Olympic events. And then finally, we're done and we can finalize our preparation for Worlds.
And how's everything going?
Basically, it's going pretty good. I mean, we finalized selection. Men's 8 chose to have a bit of quiet and different water. So they went up to Dartmouth. The crews that are not participating in trials like the men's 4, and the women's 4, the women's 8, the women's quad, like men's double, they're training at Carnegie right now, thanks to the hospitality of Princeton. So that's good. And for the rest, there's a lot of nervous people running around here who want to take the final spots.
Of course. What did you think of the U23 results?
Well, if you look at it, I think it's really great that both the men's 8 and the women's 8 and both the Coxed Force came on the podium again. I think we know that competition is hard. If you look at the spread, I think it was only one country on Sunday that got 2 golds, and for the rest, it was totally spread. 10 different countries winning a gold medal. So being there, taking 2 golds, one for the light men's pair, one for the women's 8 is really great. A couple of silvers, or 1 silver for the men's 8, and a couple of bronzes for the Coxed Force. In total, 5 medals. You know, you could always want more, but if you want more, you have to prepare better. And I think one of the things that we have to realize is it is hard for people to have enough experience to compete at the highest level in the small boats. So we have to improve our skills. But, there's enough medals in the big boats to gain. So we did a pretty good job. I'm happy.
Yeah, it was fun to see those 8s. Speaking of small boats, though, a couple of people have been asking about, there were some reactions to the switch in the lightweight women's double with Molly Ruckford coming out. Everyone is curious. Everyone is, sort of coming up with their own ideas of what's happening there. Is there anything you can say about that double?
Yeah, sure. I think Molly and Michelle are a great double. And I think we have to understand that the Olympics are next year. And if you want to make sure that you've got a competitive boat, you have to look at your options. And obviously, we can wait till the final moment before we do a final selection and then upset everybody. Or we can accept the situation as it was. We had a procedure. We said, okay, we do a selection. We do a camp in Chula Vista. We invited 4 lightweights. We set them up, and Mary did pretty well. And because you don't want to have a decision just taken upon results at one camp, we said, okay, so what we do, we will verify what's the best combination right now. Maybe not always, but right now after the World Cup. So Molly and Michelle did a great job. They got a silver at the World Cup. 2 weeks later, we did a time trial, 1,750 meters. We compared it with the heavy double. The heavy double was the first race, Molly and Michelle. The heavy double was 3 seconds faster. The second race, the heavy double had the same speed. The heavy double rode the same time twice. So objectively, I would say that the second combination was faster. And well, if we want to try it, we have to try it now. I have total confidence in Mary and in Michelle, but I also know that we've got a team of lightweights, and we want to achieve the highest. And if you want to achieve the highest, you have to take into consideration all your options. And this is one of the options. And, Molly is a great girl, great athlete. She took it well. She told me, I didn't show myself at the best possible way. I know that. And she did the utmost best to get selected for the quad, which she was. So now we've got Molly in the quad, Michelle in the double, and next year, might be different. Then we've got maybe Tracy in the quad and I don't know, Andy in the double. It's what it is. We have to be fair. We have to decide what our chances are, what our best boats are, and what our best options are. And it's not just out of fear. I'm not afraid. I know that people consider this to be a risk, but I'm not afraid. I mean, we will make sure that the best athletes will be in the best boats, period. And this is one of the consequences. So sometimes it's not the obvious choice. And sometimes it's not even the choice that people expect. But, the only thing I want to live up to is the expectations of people. But I'm not considered to be doing what they expect. Because if we do what everybody expects, we do what we did. If we do what we did, we get what we got. We got nothing. And we have to get more. Simple.
I like that. I like that very much. Our new tagline. All right. Well, Josi, thank you so much. It's always good to catch up with you.
Great speaking to you. Hope to see you soon.
And that's all for this episode of The Swing of Things. I hope you enjoyed hearing from Chris, Rich, Josi, and the Row 360 team. Don't forget to drop us a message via the mailbag using theswingofthinks@usrowing.org email address. And remember to like, share, and follow from wherever you get your podcasts. It helps others to find us. Please subscribe to make sure you don't miss future episodes. And thanks for listening.